really interesting case study. I've known Dave now for a couple of years, probably, through a mutual director friend that we've both had contact in and worked with. And there's two things about Dave that made me really want to bring him to the university to do this talk. Maybe three things. Firstly, his work is fascinating. And to say it is an excellent example of the kind of strategic filmmaking and festival submission planning that you need to be doing, I think it's an underestimation. I just jotted down some numbers, so we're going to look at two of Dave's shorts today. One was funded, and one was self-funded.
Yeah, first one was the funded.
The funded one. So 144 festival acceptances, 144 for one film. Okay, 18 wins in competition, and Girl and Scar, his most recent work, 33 festival acceptances and 4 wins to date, but is absolutely still rolling on.
It's doing all right.
Dave's work is a strange mix. I think I described it as a mix between kind of David Lynch meets Guillermo del Toro.
I'll say that.
With a dark side of something fairly sinister and even more disturbing and psychotic, but a fascinating filmmaker. And also, I think, because we have lots of different stratas of filmmakers here, I think David's experience is probably closest to where you'll be at, or where you should be at coming out of university and going into the industry in the long term. So today's about looking at some of his work, talking about his directorial style, talking about his approaches to filmmaking, and maybe just picking up some of the lessons that you guys can benefit from in the long term. And absolutely, in terms of directors that I know, probably the most real in terms of no ego and no pretense, just a down-to-earth kind of solid guy, which is always nice. But we'll start with the screen then of Dystopian Street. Then we'll go into just a chat about bits and bobs. Obviously, we have the script read-through later today at 4 o'clock. Even if you're not actively involved in taking a part, I would urge you to attend that and get others to attend it, just because it's a part of the filmmaking process that I think our students don't do enough. Yeah, I think too often we go from thinking we've got a final edit of the script to going into production, and then you end up in the edit room going, this doesn't work, and I've got nothing to work with now. I can't make this work. So come to the read-through. That's going to be of The Invoked, which is going to be your first feature film.
That's correct.
And yeah, all are welcome. So we'll start with Dystopian Street. You just hit 0 on the lights, like that.
Watch it, you get inspired by specific filmmakers. But as much, I'm not a massive fan of commercial film, although I kind of take what I will from it, which helps me as a filmmaker. But I always tend to find a lot of it quite dull and samey. And for me, film is about experimenting with the tools I had at the time and trying to make people actually think about what they're actually watching on the screen, instead of just sitting there with a bag of popcorn, munching the popcorn, laughing, this, that and the other. And of course there's room for that in cinema, of course, but as a person, and as a filmmaker, I wanted to try something different. So my idea was for this and it was something I intended to do, was over a course of, I think it was about 2 years or so, any dreams or nightmares which I had and images which stayed with me once I woke up, or often I'd these dreams or nightmares would actually wake me up in the middle of the night. I'd made sure I had a pen and a piece of paper there. So I'd write down, the nature of the images, things what had affected me, and I collated like this little book with loads of strong images in, and all ones which affected me personally. And the intention was to turn them into a screenplay, which that's basically where Dystopian Street came from initially.
Okay, and in terms of obviously you've stated that a lot of cinema, mainstream cinema, is mundane. In terms of your kind of heroes of film, who would you kind of point to in terms of your inspirations?
It's a difficult one because there's lots. I'm a massive fan of European art house, horror. Lots of the early kind of 1970s British horror, Hammer, Amicus, all that kind of stuff I grew up with when I was younger, and which obviously affected me in a good way, I would say. In a
Yeah,
good way.
absolutely.
But, you know, as I've got older, you know, and certainly with the internet these days, you can find all sorts of different, you know, experimental and really genre-pushing films, which to me, it's what making art is all about, you know. It's about trying to do something different, you know. Of course, you're all going to be inspired by various filmmakers and various artists, as I'm sure with these guys, the guys who we are inspired from were themselves, you know. But I think it's about making your own kind of inroads in it, and you know, trying to put your own voice, your own stamp on it, on your work.
In terms of your journey then into film, when did that begin? Was that a kind of childhood revelation that you've got to be in the movies, or what was your route
not
to
at
it?
all. Obviously, from an early age, I was attracted to cinema and film, but I never really had the self-confidence to think it was something I could actually do, to be honest. You know, I came from a working class background, and my parents never really pushed me in education at all. You know, I left school, just went at normal jobs. Then I kind of went, lost it a bit, and had 10 years of just going crazy, you know, as you do when you're young, burning the candle at both ends, finding me, you know, finding about what I was really about. That was when I kind of got into music and more deeply into cinema. And it was kind of then, in my kind of mid-20s, I thought, you know, what am I doing with my life? You know, I'm not doing anything. I'm just floating along, you know, with no purpose really. So I kind of thought, well, you know, what is it I like? And there was only two things, music and film. So it was kind of, right, well, what can I do to kind of further this interest in music or film? So I did a media production. I went to college, did a media production course for 2 years, and from that I realised it was kind of the image-led stuff I preferred, even though I love music. So I went to do a BA, as you guys are doing. I studied at the University College of Ripon in York, St John. The course I did there, though, was it wasn't as specified as the course you do here. I mean, I'd have loved to have been on this course because it sounded so much better than the course I did, which was covered literature, TV. In fact, it was more geared towards television, because with it being in York, they had really good connections with Yorkshire TV, so they tended to push all the students into television. Now, I wasn't really interested in television, it just bored me silly, you know. So kind of every time I was trying to ask about film, they were kind of pushing me back. So I thought, you know, yeah, I've got a degree at the end of it, but, you know, when I graduated, I thought, well, I'm going to have to do it myself, you know, there's no real... I never left uni with anything other than a bit more theoretical knowledge regarding film. And it was kind of from there, really, I suppose.
So in terms of, obviously, you went to university, you acquired the practical skills, or some of the practical skills and the understanding. Post-university, because already we've got at least one graduate in the room, post-university, what was the kind of most important thing you think you did that took you from that point to being awarded funding for this short?
I don't think there was one thing, really. I mean, I graduated in 2000, and basically I've been knocking at it ever since, you know. I can't really pinpoint one thing. You know, I just got myself about there, worked on things for free, worked on film, TV, commercials, short films in various roles. When I first left uni, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. I thought with me kind of being into the visual thing, I was going to go along the camera route, and I did start off on that. I did a few jobs, camera assistant, did a bit of gripping and this, that and the other. And then I realised I'm not really a technical person, you know. I realised the camera department wasn't really for me. So that was when I started writing my own screenplays, more or less just after I'd graduated, and just making films basically with no money. Going out there, getting to know people, getting friends in to help me. I was helping them make films, they were helping me make films. And it kind of went from there, really. I was kind of lucky at the time because back then, before the UK Film Council was axed, there was a lot of regional filmmaking schemes going on back then, whereas now it's all run by the BFI and it's all pretty much London-centric. Back then, you know, you had your regional areas. Yeah. What's yours around here? What is it?
It was here media.
Yeah.
But it'll be Creative England, I think.
Right.
We've taken over from that.
But back then they were more regional based, so basically you applied for schemes to your own region, whereas a lot of the time now we have to apply to BFI in London. So I was kind of lucky that the third film I made was a funded film as well, which I learnt a lot from, but it was a bad experience really because of the production company who were involved. They kind of took over and my film ended up not one thing nor the other.
I get you.
You know, but you know, I learned a lot from that experience.
And that process of applying for funding, which is often, it's the key to unlocking the real potential. We've got some incredibly talented filmmakers in here. What they don't have is huge amounts of money to throw at their own films, which is always going to compromise things. But would you have any advice about kind of seeking funding and that process of applying and going down that particular route?
All I would say was try and get connected with these people. Go to your local film office. Even if they're not running schemes, they will be connected with BFI or Creative England or whoever. Get to know these guys who work there. Show them your work. Be passionate about what you do. And then when you do apply, you know, people talk. You know, if they like you, it goes a long, long way. Who you know.
In terms of your creativity, because one of the things that we quite often hear is students know they've got to be creative, but no one teaches creativity. Do you have a kind of sense of where your creativity comes from, or any advice for students who might kind of know that there's something inside them they want to express that's very personal, but feel maybe a little bit trapped by genre expectations and just doing what's been done before?
I think that's something that all filmmakers go through, because obviously you're inspired by certain filmmakers' work, so you tend to copy them to begin with. Well, I certainly did to a point. But I think the more you make film, the more you grow into it as a person and as a filmmaker, the more you bring in of your own life into it. So I think it's just about, really for me, it was about getting to know what I liked, what was going on in my life and what turned me on as a filmmaker. And it's a difficult thing without a doubt, but I think stay true to yourself is the one thing I would say. Don't let anyone try and change what you're trying to do, because I don't think that will work in the long run. You need to have a passion for what you're doing, and for me that's what it's all about. Success is about your passion. So whatever try not to deviate from that road, because I think in the long run it's the wrong thing to do.
So the next step, in terms of short filmmaking, you can't get much more successful.
You can, believe it or not. Yeah.
Well, there's not many filmmakers I know that have got that kind of track record. Obviously, the next step is the feature film. And for those who have come to the read-through, obviously you'll be taking part in that experience. Can you talk us through that transition from going, okay, I know I make great short films, I know I can do this, to going, but I need to take it to the next level? What was it like for you on just a personal scale, taking on something so much bigger?
It was difficult for me, to be honest. I always thought kind of short form when I've written. I found it easy. A lot of people find it hard to write succinct short films, but I found it really easy, because I tended to always work. I found my start point, I found my end point, and I kind of just filled the middle bit in. I know that sounds a bit crazy, but it kind of worked for me personally. So moving on to the feature thing, Girl in the Sky, the film you'll see at the end here, is my most recent short film. That's the 10th short film I've made since 2000. So I've kind of, now I realise, it's pointless, what am I gaining now by making another short film?
Yeah.
Nothing really, I'm experienced enough now. So hence why I felt as though I needed to do a feature. But I did find that transition really difficult. To be honest, the first attempt I had was, as you know, developing Girl in the Sky into a feature, which was really interesting, but I found it really difficult. Because and I think this comes back to me as a person, I tended to get bored too quickly, and I think that's why shorts worked for me.
Right.
Because, you know, it was short and it was sharp and to the point, and then moved on to the next thing. With a feature, you need a hell of a lot more staying power, because, you know, you're looking at the same characters, you know, week in, month in, year out, you know what I mean? Constantly you're looking at the same characters, the same dialogue, the same locations, and you do get bored with them. You don't see the freshness, what's there at the beginning, you know.
Yeah.
So I haven't found it an easy thing,
Okay.
but you know, I think it's a rewarding thing, you know, when you've got that script in front of you.
And how important is it for you moving forward? Because you obviously have a fairly unique directorial style. How important is it for you to work with a kind of established crew who understand where you're coming from artistically? Or moving forward, is it a case of, well, actually, a crew's a crew? Or do you need those kind of key roles filled with people that you have collaborated with before?
Well, to a point, I think probably some heads of department, production design, DP is very important for me, because my films are very visual and they need to look a specific way. Outside of that, no, because I think, you know, making a film is about collaboration. So, you know, if you've got a good relationship with anybody, you know, you talk, don't you? And that's what it comes down to, just communication. Okay. Obviously, film heads of department who I've worked with before understand the kind of stuff I want, so it's easier with them to kind of have a quicker chat. Whereas if I was getting in someone new, I'd have to kind of show them my body of work and tell them kind of where I'm coming from as a filmmaker, to try and grasp that vision I'm looking for.
And what over the course of you know, a number of years of doing this, you think are the most important lessons you've learned, particularly as a director?
Don't let anybody say you can't do it, you know. I'm not the most self-confident person in the world, and I still aren't now, you know. I'm not good at these things, you know, to be honest. I'm quite a kind of sensitive, inward person, hence why I enjoy writing, I suppose, you know. But I haven't let that stop me moving forward, you know, because I think you know yourself as a person and as an artist, you know, and you can get a million people who stand up and talk a good game. You know, I'm crap at that. I can't do that. You know, I let my work speak for itself, and I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's actually doing it. You hear so many people say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. This, that, and the other." 2 years, 3 years down the line, what have they done? They haven't done nothing, but they're still talking about it. You know, so it's important to just forget all the crap what comes with the industry. There's so much. You just do it. Just get your head down. Get there. Get to know the nice people, get rid of the not nice people, and believe me, there's a lot of not nice people in the industry. Not people are there for the wrong reasons. And just do it, just believe in yourself and do it.
And how important is it to have, and we talked about this earlier, how important is it to develop that kind of thick skin? You talked about being a sensitive guy. A lot of these students, as artists, as practitioners, absolutely would probably kind of correlate with that. How important has it been over that career to both be able to endure you know, the long haul and to take the criticism and still kind of bounce back?
I think the criticism's part of it. I mean, to be honest, you know, yeah, the films I make are very different, and of course, along with success comes a lot of criticism. You know, I get a lot of people who watch my films just don't even try to get them or don't try to understand them, and that's fine. You know, everybody, you know, watches films for a different reason. You know, so I understand that, but you know, on the same part, equally, there's just as many people who find what I do really interesting. And I kind of, when you start off as a filmmaker, rejections, you know, it's a massive thing. Of course, I understand that. And as many festivals as my films have got in, they've been rejected from twice as many as that, you know. But you just have to keep pushing on and just believe in what you do, believe in yourself as an artist or as a filmmaker, and just go for it, you know. Because, you know, there's no, it's subjective, isn't it? There's no right,
absolutely.
there's no wrong in filmmaking. You know, once you know the basics, you use the tools what you have around you to do what you feel's in there, and that's certainly what I've did.
And on that question of festival submissions, I think maybe one of our weaknesses here is we don't push our students enough towards getting their films into film festivals. What's your approach to it? Is there any kind of wisdom? You know, you've clearly you need a good product. Yeah, that's at the core of it. But when you sit down, and I know you told me that you actually do all your festival submission yourself, which is a massive undertaking. What's the kind of approach? Do you have a strategy for that?
Well, I think first and foremost you need to know your audiences for your work. You know, it's pointless me submitting this to, I don't know, London Film Festival or Toronto or somewhere massive like that, because I know it won't stand a chance, you know. And believe me, when I was younger, I did submit so many films, which granted weren't quite as off the wall as these, into them festivals, and of course they never got in, you know. But the more films I've made, the more I've learned to kind of look at who the audience is for these films, and from that gives you a great starter into look at which festivals, you know, may screen that kind of work, I suppose.
And of all the festival submissions and the prizes you won, which is the one that you kind of feel is closest to your heart, the one that really kind of meant something for you, is the one you could single out?
Probably the last one for Gas, which was 2 weeks ago.
Right.
The one in Cardiff Festival.
Okay.
Simply because it's a mainstream festival.
Right.
And I submitted Girl in the Sky. I wouldn't normally submit my work to mainstream festivals unless they had a specific category which it might fit into, and a lot of the time it doesn't even fit into that, you know, because it's, as you'll see with Girl in the Sky, it's kind of experimental, it's kind of fantasy, it's kind of horror, it's got a bit of everything, so it doesn't really, you can't really pigeonhole it in a box, which is problematic, to be honest, when you're making films, because film festivals like to, a piece of work, oh, that's a drama, you know, that's a horror, that's a comedy, you know. You go away from that and you're ultimately lowering your chances of getting in festivals, which what I do, to be honest. But at the end of the day, I like to think, well, you know, I'd like to hope that a festival's on for something completely different. And obviously some of them are, because, you know, my film's getting there. But yeah, Cardiff International Film Festival had a category called Critics' Choice category, which was the film which pushed boundaries. So I thought, I'll get in that, and it was a free to submit to one, actually. And it got selected for the festival and won the award for the short film. So
Excellent. Now I'm just going to check on time, because I obviously want to screen Girl in the Sky. I think we're going to have to do that now. The kind of themes that I'm drawing out, and I'm sorry it's been so condensed in terms of, this is a very short audience with David Cave today. The kind of themes that I think are developing here is a notion of being true to yourself artistically, coupled with a relentless commitment to making film.
I mean, you have to be passionate. At the end of the day, nobody's going to come up to you and give you, you know, a budget unless you happen to be connected or rich, you know. But essentially, no one's ever came up to me and gave me a budget unless I've applied myself as a person and as a filmmaker, and, you know, got out there, met people, shown them what I'm about as a person, and what my art is about, and just gone for it, kind of, you know, never given up, really. You know, you will get beaten down, you will be rejected, you know, I can guarantee it, you know, but you just have to keep going. And I know so many filmmakers who, you know, they made good films, and maybe they've gone half a dozen film festivals where the films got rejected, and then they've just give up. And I think, well, what's the point in that? Why go and make, you know, put all the effort, hard work into making a film and then just let it gather dust on a shelf? So yeah, you need that passion, you need the thick skin, and you just have to be true to yourself and go for it, believe in your own work.
David, thank you. Can we give David a round of applause, please? We're going to screen Girl in the Sky now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
So, hi.
Hello.
So earlier you mentioned for Dystopia Street, you made a dream journal and put it all together in a narrative. Obviously, you don't have to answer for each and every dream, but I was wondering what the individual dreams meant to you, and whether putting them into a narrative kind of helped you deal with any issues that potentially were going on in your life.
Possibly.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't really answer that. They were just dreams or nightmares which woke me up, or not, or which I remembered the next morning when I'd woke up, which were really strong. You know, sometimes you have dreams. Often they do wake you up and it's there and it feels real, doesn't it, for however long till you kind of come around, and it stays with you for a while. It was kind of just that, or if I'd woke up the next morning and particularly remembered anything specific which just felt weird when I was dreaming, you know, and once again it stayed with me. I'd just written it down, and as I said, I did it over, it was nearly 2 years or so. I made a little book, and then the difficult part was threading it all together. And to be honest, the initial script, I think that went through about 6 drafts, but I was working with a script editor from Northern Film and Media on that one, because that was the funded film. So kind of there was a lot of stuff which didn't end up in there, and there was some new stuff we had to put in there in order to link it together. Yeah. Otherwise it had just been a lot of nonsensical images, which, you know, and as you know, as much as I'd have probably loved that, you know, the film wouldn't have got made simply because it was a funded film, you know. Mm-hmm. So I kind of did have to, you know, pull back a bit. Otherwise the film would never have been made. But in terms of dealing with issues, I don't know, maybe. I think, you know, your dream world to me is just important as so-called reality, you know, and it makes up you as a person. So probably there was some issues there, but I can't really put my finger on anything, what was happening at the time.
Do you mind if I double barrel that question?
No, go ahead.
Going back to like, I know earlier you talked about finding your audience and stuff, particularly with these kinds of films where the message can be quite vague if people aren't thinking hard enough. How do you get people to, or I guess have the confidence that festivals are going to take the time to actually try and figure out your films?
Again, I don't know, because, you know, I'm not part of the festival, but I would just like to think that, you know, as I said earlier, film's subjective, you know, you might like something what he doesn't like and vice versa, like all art. You know, I think it's just a matter of persistence in a way, you know. You know there's people out there who like the kind of stuff you like. The difficulty is finding them. I think you make any film, you will have an audience somewhere in the world. It's just that, like I say, it's a long-standing effort you have to put in to find that audience, and a lot of people give up too early, I think. And that's something I've never done, because I believed that my work is you know, prompts viewing, multiple viewings, and, you know, the first, I think, Dystopia Street, the first 12 film festivals I submitted to, it was rejected. I could have just given up then and then, you know. But I thought, no, because I know that there's something there, and I know that there's people out there who will like it. It's just finding them, you know. So in terms of the, you know, festival selectors, I can't really answer that question from that point of view. But there obviously is, you know, people who kind of look at film, what's different, and say, well, you know, we have an audience who may well want to be challenged, and this is ideal for that, I suppose.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you.
You all right, Dave?
Hello. Yeah. Fine,
yeah. So I'm really interested. You were saying that in your third film you were working with a production company, and they sort of pushed it one direction, and you sort of said it neither became one thing or another. Now I think that's something in probably a lot of our careers we're going to have, is where people are trying to influence it. So I was wondering if you could maybe go into a bit more detail about what their influence was, and then if potentially if you could you know, hindsight always being a great thing, if there's anything you think you could have done to maybe keep it closer to the vision you intended?
Well, there was kind of a few things going on at that time. For one, it was my third film. I was naive, you know, it was the first funded film I'd ever made. The production company who were producing it were quite well established in Newcastle at the time. So obviously I looked at them, oh wow, I'm making this funded film. These guys obviously know what they're doing because they've made shorts. They'd never made anything like what I wanted to make, but they'd made successful short films. So the issue wasn't in pre-production or in production. It was in the edit where the issue was, because a friend of mine from York, who I met at uni, was editing that film at the time. He came down from York to Newcastle to edit the film, and he was doing it on a laptop, so we were doing some of it at home and some of it in the production company office. And it was basically, when we took them in and showed them the cut, it was kind of like, I don't know if that'll work, I don't know that. And because I was so naive as a filmmaker, you know, I wasn't strong enough to stand up and say, well, this is what, you know, this is my vision as a director. This is how the film needs to be. So kind of some elements stayed in and some elements got took out, and, you know, it was really disappointing because, again, the film was a really visual one. And for me, it was just completely spoilt. Like I say, I think they're trying to make it more mainstream, which I can kind of understand their point of view in terms of getting the film seen. But, you know, with all the goodwill in the world, when you kind of, the film's kind of in the middle between, you know, something and nothing, and it was just spoilt for me, really. And, you know, I learned from that. In fact, I was really quite lucky to get that second film made, because going by, it was the same non-film and media who funded Dystopia Street as well. So kind of going, I mean, the first one, which was called Their Favourite Hat, it was about a young guy with schizophrenia who meets his kind of double personality, as it were, the voice in his head. And it was two twins who played it, who used to be in Biker Grove, if you ever remember that. But, I learned, as I say, I learned a hell of a lot from that. Moving forward, the film got screened at a few festivals. It did probably only about 12 or so, all in the UK, but it wasn't massively successful at all. And I think a lot of the funders looked at it as like, kind of, what's this? Even more so than these, you know. And for me, that was the production company's fault, not my fault. But obviously, because I was the filmmaker, it was my vision. It was me who got the kind of backwash of it. So as I was saying, I think I was kind of lucky getting that done, because the woman who was the script editor on Dystopia Street was actually involved in the funding selections, and she kind of liked the kind of stuff I did. When that got made in 2010 or 11 or so, it was the last year of that particular scheme, and the woman who was involved on the selection committee kind of thought, fuck it, you know, we want to make something really different. So that's how I got in. So I was kind of lucky, but as I was saying earlier, I mean, there's a mixture of luck and just pushing yourself as a person, as a filmmaker. And, you know, yeah, you're going to get no, and you're going to get rejected from this, that, and the other. But, you know, it shouldn't stop you. Shouldn't stop if you've got that belief and passion inside of yourself. You know, just never stop. Just go for it.
Thank you.
Okay.
If you had to pick a couple of films that you say sort of influenced you or inspired you the most, what would they be, and why?
Again, a difficult question, and
Yeah.
there's so many what's inspired me. Probably I would say, I have to mention this one, and you'll all be aware of it, the Romero's Dawn of the Dead, simply because I think I was 13 when that came out, and it was kind of the first video I'd seen, and I'll never forget it, because it was like a sunny Saturday afternoon, and I'd gotten on my mate's house. Like I say, we were only young teenagers, and he was like, oh yeah, I've got this. Put it on, and it was like, fucking hell, wow, you know, never seen anything like that back then. You know what I mean? And that, I think that was what maybe kind of kicked me off and like,
Yeah.
you know, really made me think, oh, that's just so amazing to be able to do something like that. And then I think kind of as I got older and I was more involved in music and kind of watching cinema, you know, I kind of got in a lot of European art house cinema or horror exploitation stuff. And I just thought there were so many European filmmakers doing so much fresh stuff, you know, so experimental and just like crazy and wacky and like, and it's just like, well, why can't I do that, you know? And the answer is there's no reason why you can't do that. Yeah, I mean, you come to university and you learn the basics, you learn, you know, the basics of shooting a film. And that's what you use it as, a base, you know what I mean? You don't have to do that every time you do it. You know, and some things you'll try will work, some things won't work. But I mean, for me, that's part of the game, that's part of the fun in trying something new and having fun doing it as well, you know?
Yeah.
And like I say, sometimes it might not work, but sometimes it does work and then, you know, you feel great.
Cool.
Okay.
Oh, you're pointing at me? Oh, thanks, man. Of course, you appreciate the bizarre and doing things new and different. What draws you to the dark and grotesque in particular?
I've been asked that lots. And I could say I don't know, but I suppose a lot of my life I've been surrounded by, let's say, people who've suffered from depression, and I've suffered from it myself in the past growing up. So kind of I've been to them places, you know, I've been to them dark places, and I've dealt with a lot of people, and I've got a lot of friends, and no doubt you guys as filmmakers and artists may or may not know people or even suffer, you know, from various mental illnesses or whatever yourself. You know what I'm saying,
Yeah,
John, yeah.
yeah.
So I kind of think, you know, it's been around me a lot of my life growing up. My mother suffered from really bad depression, so I grew up with that, and I see now that affected her. So it's kind of been around me all my life. So I think that's why I'm kind of attracted to kind of the dark side of cinema, horror and experimental stuff. 'Cause I don't know, maybe I just see things in a different way to the average Joe. I don't know, but I would say if I was to give an answer, that was probably it.
Sweet.
Okay.
Anybody else? Yes, Hugo.
Hi, I was just wondering,
Hello.
like, where you found work, like when you just left, like, you just learned about making films and stuff. And then
What, when
how
I
did you,
left uni?
yeah, where did you go from there? Did you,
I worked at a Newcastle-based production company for 2 years, just being an assistant producer. So kind of, although that wasn't what I wanted to do, it was kind of really office-based stuff, making phone calls and talking to actors and this, that and the other. It gave me a really good base for how the industry worked. From that, I started working on a lot of Newcastle-based stuff. Like I worked on Biker Grove for 2 years. I worked on Wire in the Blood, a lot of TV stuff. I worked on a couple of feature films what was shot up there, and a load of short films and commercials. And through that, I kind of almost ticked off what I thought, I'm not interested in that, you know. I don't want to be an AD. No, I don't want to be working the camera department. And I think more than anything, it made me see, you know, what everybody's role was within the industry in film and TV, and what didn't interest me, you know. Ironically, it was the majority of it didn't interest me when it came down to it, because although I love visual stuff, you know, I'm not really a technical person. I'm more of a creative person, hence why I stepped back to writing and direct my own stuff. So in terms of working in the industry now, I mean, I do help people, just doing various roles if people need my help. But I co-run a community video production company in Newcastle called One for All Productions, and we work with marginalised groups in the northeast, just doing filmmaking workshops. And this, but a lot of it's like private funding. You know, you have to apply for funding, grants, and what have you, to get the money to work with these groups. And I've also got just a normal part-time job, which I just do a couple of hours a week, just to bring in regular money when I'm not doing the stuff with the production company.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody? Come on, stand. Okay.
Hi there, you're right.
Hello.
I think Tom mentioned, did he say that you do all your festival submissions yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering how you find out about what's like available to you.
Well, just
terms of-
online, really. There's
Okay.
there's a lot of film festival platforms which basically, I don't know if any of you guys are aware of them. You just upload your film onto there with a lot of information about your film, and it's as easy as clicking a button and you submit to whatever festival. Obviously, a lot of them, they charge submission fees.
Okay.
So depending on what budget, I mean, I tend to kind of just see what money I've got coming in month after month, and if there's any festivals, I kind of make a list, if you know what I mean. Think, oh, well, it might be worth submitting to that one, or now a lot of the time, because of the connections I've made at film festivals around the world through Dystopia Street, I kind of know the direction I'm going in with gas, really. But again, it's just about getting to know people and learning who your audience are. And as I said earlier, doing the research into the festivals, what will screen that genre of film, what you make.
Are there any like particular like online services that you'd say are like really good for?
Pardon?
Like, are there any like online services like in particular that you
Platforms.
think? Yeah.
Yeah. Probably the biggest and best one is Film Freeway.
Okay.
That's, well, I've found it more filmmaker friendly than some of the others, which take more money off you basically. Yeah, Film Freeway is the best. There's a few, you know, which are worth looking into, but again, it depends on what budget you've got, I suppose, for festival submissions. But yeah, that's definitely the best way to go about it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers.
That's great. I've never had as many questions. That's great.
With your upcoming feature film, what are your plans in terms of are you going to be looking for festival submissions that way, or are you like in talks with publishers, or what? How what are the plans after it's made, I guess?
I don't know yet. Really, it depends on money. It comes down to money, I suppose.
Yeah.
Depends what budget the film gets, if it gets any at all. I suppose I'll be looking towards, because I've made them connections now.
Yeah.
With film festivals, what screen, that kind of stuff. I'll certainly be submitting it if it ever gets made to them kind of film festivals. Sorry, what was the other part of your question? Was
Just generally, like, what is the plan after making it, how it will get distributed? And
well,
stuff?
the idea always is to. I mean, I don't really make films for the money, you know. I mean, some of the shorts like them two are distributed. You can get Dystopia Street's been released on an anthology of shorts in America, and it's also online on VOD online. And I'll probably do the same with Girl in the Sky when it's finished its festival run. But in terms of shorts, that's pretty much all you can do. So you kind of get a bit of money back off it, but not lots, you know. And the same goes, I suppose, with a feature. You know, I'm not really doing it for the money, although, you know, the money would be nice. I can't understand that I'm never going to make a living out of this, you know, filmmaking. But again, that's not why I do it. It's because I love doing it, is why I do it, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just the next natural step for me. And yeah, obviously, depending on how the film turns out and how successful it is at festivals or not, is whether or not I can find distribution for it. But I think the bigger thing for me is going on to make something else bigger than that. as I said earlier, I'd developed Girl in the Sky into a feature, and Tom was helping me with that as well. It turned out into a bit of a kind of fantasy epic, like with a massive budget, you know, and loads of CGI and this, that and the other. And I'd spoke to Tom and said, look, with all the goodwill in the world, nobody is going to see a guy who, okay, his shots have done okay, but nobody's going to go, yeah, there's 3 million quid to go off and make the feature. You know, it's just not going to happen. Certainly not in this country, you know. So the Invoke, the one we're doing the read-through for later on, is kind of a more low-budget, kind of surreal. It's not even. It's a lot more commercial than what they are. You know, it's got a proper narrative. It does get quite dark at the end, but as I say, the idea is hopefully find distribution in order to go on and do something after that.
Sweet, cool. Thank you.
No bother.
So when you go from just your original idea that you've written down something from a dream, and then you know you want to then take that to make it into a short, what's your process in maybe sourcing talent and crew? Like, what steps do you take to then bring that to other people and see if they're interested, and sort of just a little bit of an insight into how that works for you?
A lot of the time it's where I live in Newcastle. It's not massive film wise, you know, there's not loads going on. So you kind of tend to bump into the same people whenever you go to events. And it's kind of just networking really. Luckily, people who I've met through working on, you know, working as a runner, for example, on a few things I did. I met other people who were other runners and stuff, but they were trying to, you know, they wanted to go down the production design route or the camera route or something like that. So obviously making them relationships was useful for me in the future because, for example, one of them guys shot Dystopia Street, who was a runner on a feature film I worked on back in 2001. So I tend to kind of use people who I've met and who I know I can work with because, as I was saying earlier, there's a lot of not very nice people in the industry. I'm not going to bullshit about it. There's some right dickheads, you know, and you come across that, you know, and it's part of it, and that's okay as long as you know where you are, where your place is in it, and just let them go on. But in terms of casting for stuff and crewing, it's probably similar to what you guys do, you know. Just throw out casting notices, or if I know any particular actors who might want to audition for it, I'll just do it that wise. And crew, it's normally people who I know or who I've worked with, or who other filmmakers who I trust have worked with, and it's recommendations from them. And 9 times out of 10, it's fine, you know. Communication and talk goes a long way in this industry, you know. If you're not a very nice person, nobody will want to work with you, regardless of how successful you are. Because nobody wants to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, spend 14 hours on a set with somebody who's going to shout at them, you know. It just doesn't make sense, you know.
Yeah. With some of your ideas being quite abstract, do you ever struggle to kind of explain them to people? Like, are those first steps of showing them the script, is that sort of a difficult process sometimes?
Yes and no. I always storyboard my films. I work with a storyboard artist who's a good friend of mine. So I kind of use that as kind of a base for kicking off things. Often, a lot of it comes through on the script. You know, the guy who shot Girl in the Sky was a guy who had actually, I was the first AD on a Yorkshire Screen short in about 2004 or something. And this guy had just started off, well, I think he'd been maybe doing it a few years, shooting stuff. And he was shooting this short, and that was where I first met him. So 10 years down the line, I was ready to start crewing up on Girl in the Sky. And bearing in mind that Girl in the Sky had basically no budget, I put in £1,000 of my own money, and we crowdfunded £500, so it was only 1,500 quid it was made on. The DP who shot Dystopia Street was supposed to be shooting Girl in the Sky, but when I'd worked out when we were going to shoot it, he was at a wedding in Ireland, and he said, he like really apologised, and he said, look, sorry, I can't do it, because it's a real good friend of mine. I have to go to this wedding. I was like, shit, what am I going to do? And I remembered this guy from this shot I'd worked on in 2003. He was a really nice guy, and he was really talented. And he happened to be on my Facebook, but I'd never spoke to him for years, you know. So I just, you know, got in touch. I said, hi Neil, how are you doing, blah, blah, blah. And he remembered me from that shot. And I told him, he knew I was a filmmaker. And I told him what I was doing with Girl in the Sky. And I said, would you be interested? Now, by this point, Neil had like moved up the ladder massively. In fact, he's just shot 2 really big feature films, the last one being the live-action version of The Little Mermaid with Shirley MacLaine. And
Neil Oseman.
Pardon?
Is that Neil Oseman?
Neil Oseman,
Yeah,
do you know him?
Yeah, I know of him.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, Neil, yeah. And I thought, I was just being a bit cheeky, saying, you know, how would you fancy, you know, having a look at my script, and would you like shooting it? So I sent him the script over, and he loved it, you know, simply because it was so visual, you know, it gave him a chance to show off his talent. And we kind of rearranged the shooting schedule around him so he could do it. And he did it unpaid. We just paid for his train up and his accommodation, his food, and this, that, and the other. And that was it, really, you know. So, as I say, I always hark back to making up strong relationships with cast, crew, anybody in the film industry, you know. You'll soon find out who the people who talk a good game and the actual people who actually make films are, through going through that process, through going to events and meeting these people.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So you were saying that your films are like really visual as is, and you storyboard everything. I was wondering how much you leave of like the shot design down to the.
How long? What? Sorry.
How much of the shot design do you leave down to the like director of photography, or do you design every shot yourself?
No, not at all. I kind of give him an idea of what I'm looking for, and I kind of tell him the mood I want to get. And to be honest, I'm quite a actor-led director. As I said earlier, I'm not really particularly technical.
Yeah.
But I know the mood I want. I know the mood I want that scene to portray or that shot to portray. So I kind of just, we have a chat about, you know, what I'm trying to get. And often I use music quite a lot with trying to capture a mood, play some music and see if that works. And often it has for my stuff, ironically. So no, I'm quite a believer in, you know, everybody who I've worked with, I've had the pleasure to work with anyway, has been talented in their own department. You know, so it doesn't bother me. I'm not one of these directors who are like, no, it can't be that. You know, I give them the space, like with actors as well. I give them the space to try different things, to you know, give what is in them as well. Because as I say, making a film is all about collaboration. A director is kind of steers the boat along, you know, trying to bring that all together. But I certainly don't limit, you know, anybody on a set, and that goes down to runners or whatever. I remember one particular instance on Dystopia Street. There was something on that phone box scene at the end, and we couldn't work out how to do something. And the runner came along and said, well, why don't you just do this? And like, I thought, oh, that's really cool. You know, a lot of people would like, they wouldn't even allow the runner to do anything other than go and run and get a cup of coffee for you, you know what I mean? But as I say, I just think, you know, I don't want to use that saying it's not brain surgery, but it's not brain surgery, you know. Making a film should be fun, should be exciting, you know, and everybody involved's there for a reason. And certainly if they're working for free, you know, they should be given their input, and you should be pulling it out of them. You know, they're learning as well. We're all learning, including me, you know. every time I make a film, I learn something new. I'm not precious about anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just another quick one as well. I was
No,
wondering
no, yeah, no
what the
bother.
name of the production company you work for in Newcastle is.
Which one, sorry?
What the name of the production company in Newcastle you work for
What,
is.
when I first started?
The one now, I didn't. Are you not still working for one?
Oh, well, I run a production company called One for All Productions,
One for All.
yeah. But we basically, as I say, just do community stuff. I mean, we produce, but we've not done anything big. The majority of my films have been produced through other production companies where money's been involved.
All right.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
Anybody else? Anybody else that wants?
We have time for about 2 more questions, so if you want to ask anything, go for it now.
Come on, 2 more.
Oh, everybody's the last one. Oh, don't be shy. Yeah, look great on camera if anyone wants to ask something maybe personally about becoming a grown up, becoming a filmmaker.
Many of you guys got anything? No?
People touched on quite a few things. And,
Cool. No, that's cool. Well, if anybody thinks of any, then like I say, I'm going to be around, going to get something to eat. So just come and ask, you know, no bother at all.
Thank you.
Okay.